The Dorothy Hodgkin Fellowship scheme is a 5-year fellowship for outstanding scientists at an early stage of their research career, who due to personal circumstances require a flexible working pattern. Holly Bridge received a fellowship in 2004 for her work on how brain functions change when visual regions are damaged.
This is our 3T scanner room. I'm interested in the visual system, the human visual system. So I'm interested in looking at what happens to people's brains when we show them different types of visual stimulation. We might show them pictures of objects. I also look at what happens when the visual system goes wrong. So in some cases, people might have had a stroke or they might have suffered damage to the brain, in which case they've lost part of their visual brain and they can no longer see things in part of the visual field. So one of the main bodies of research that we've looked at is people who have no vision. So particularly a group of people who were born without eyes. So obviously in that case, we can't show them anything while they're in the scanner, but instead what we're interested in is those bits of the brain that would normally respond to visual information, what do they respond to? And what I've shown over the past 8 years or so is that those visual areas actually respond to hearing now. The areas that would normally respond to hearing still respond to hearing, although they respond a little bit less. Those areas that would normally respond to vision now also respond to hearing. So if we ask someone to sort of generate words in their brain, so they hear something like an animal that barks and they have to come up with the word dog in this case, what you can see is that if this is the left hemisphere, so the left side of the brain, and you can see there's more activity here than there is on the right because the left hemisphere is specialised for language. And these areas down here are the areas that do our basic auditory processing, so they take in, they understand this sentence. And then here at the front is the language processing area. And you can see on the right, it's mainly just that hearing area that you see. Now, if we go to these people who are anophthalmic, they don't have any eyes, we do get those areas for hearing and a little bit for language, but in addition, you can see there's lots of activity back here, and this is the visual area of the brain. And particularly this area here, which would normally process pictures of objects, here it's processing the generation of that word dog. One of the other areas that I've been interested in since starting the Dorothy Hodgkin Fellowship was what happens where people have suffered damage to the visual cortex. So in the people without eyes, we've got this massive reorganisation, but where there's damage to the visual cortex, people are basically left blind on one side of space. From that early work, what I looked at was, is there anything that stays functional when you've had that sort of damage? And what we found is that there's an area that responds to motion, which will still respond to motion even after you've had this damage. So over the next couple of years, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting people through a rehabilitation programme where they're repeatedly presented with moving stimuli and hopefully actually have an impact on people's lives. So on a Wednesday, I'll come up here to the Brain Imaging Centre, I'll do some research, and then I get on my bike and I cycle down into town to New College, and I teach for 4 hours there. So I finish at about 5:15, and then I got on my bike and I cycle to the other end of town to meet my daughter from gymnastics. So then the two of us cycle the 2 miles home. She's 7, and then a babysitter arrives about half an hour later and I go out to football training. I coach football twice a week between 5 and 6 as well. So I got my Royal Society, the first one, the Dorothy Hodgkin, in 2004, and I had my first child about 6 months after I started that. Not having anyone who is watching over you, making sure that you're in work at a certain time and that you're doing certain hours, it gives me the flexibility to go on conferences. I can get a new computer to make sure that I can process all the data. And it also gives me a bit of a backup. So some of my projects may be funded at a certain time, whereas others might not. And actually just having an extra, £5,000, £6,000, £7,000 to pay for additional scanning is very helpful. I think I felt at the end of the Dorothy Hodgkin that I was now completely independent. I had a good vision about what I wanted to do because I used the Dorothy Hodgkin to shift from very basic neuroscience in healthy people to actually looking at the abnormal visual system. And at that point, I knew what I wanted to do for the next 5 years. So I was in a very good position to write a new proposal. When I got awarded the University Research Fellowship, I was actually on maternity leave with the second child. So that was probably one of the best days of my life, thinking, yes, I've got, up to 8 years of funding now. I can relax on my maternity leave and sort of just wait till I get back.